Before we get into this episode, I would like to make a quick disclaimer that all of Society Inspired's interviews and the information we share are 100% for learning experience and to hear the different sides of the various issues we discuss. We never endorse nor support violence, and we are committed to promoting peace. I want to create a safe space for learning and comfortable place for people to be able to start to speak. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 18th episode of Society Inspired. My name is Gemma. I'm a 16-year-old Palestinian American teen, and I am so excited to have Michelle Abiero as our special guest for episode number 18. Would you like to introduce yourself, tell us your story, and also share your preferred pronouns, please?
Okay, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I am honored to be here. My name is Michelle Abiero. I am a Kenyan activist currently living in the US who is extremely passionate about mental health, uh, gender equity, and representation. And my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. What inspired you to begin being a voice and advocate for mental health discussions?
My first introduction to mental health advocacy was when I was about 13 years old. A friend of mine confided in me that they were battling suicidal ideation. And of course, at that age, my first instinct was like, hey, you should probably go reach out to a friend or rather like a parent or a teacher. And they quickly told me how that they would be met with stigma and be ridiculed. And that's when it kind of dawned on me that there was a problem with how we viewed mental health and how we talked about mental health in Kenya. And it wasn't just Kenya alone, but it was a global challenge. And I realized that something needed to be changed. And if I wanted to see a change, it had to begin with me.
Yes. And that leads me to my next question. How does the stigma around mental health stop people from asking for help?
Yeah, that is a very important question. When it comes to stigma around mental health, the conversations we have around mental health play a key role on whether people will reach out for help or not. Legislations play a huge role whether people will reach out for help or not. So when we have a society that does not encourage people to reach out for help, whereby we reduce mental illnesses, we make fun of mental illnesses, we subject people with mental illnesses to ridicule and things of the sort. We make it very difficult for anyone who's having a challenge, anyone who's battling through difficult times, or somebody who may feel like they have a mental illness to reach out for help, um, making it a very isolating feeling, and in at the end of it all, just very dangerous and most likely for them not to get help. So how we talk about mental health, our semantics around mental health, they matter.
Yeah. A lot of it I feel like is in the government too.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do have to agree with you there. One of the issues that a lot of mental health activists in Kenya take is legislation. One of the legislations, right, in as much as the government is doing its best when it comes to being pro mental health, is that um, attempted suicide is illegal in Kenya. And that makes it hard for anyone who's attempted suicide to get the help that they need, because there's this conflicting idea of whether to report to the police, and that there's a jail sentence. I'm not too sure how long the jail sentence is, and or a fine. So I don't think anyone who has attempted suicide needs to be met with those two. And it's, as you said, how legislations around mental health matters.
Wow, I did not know that. That's crazy. What are some signs to notice if someone in your life is struggling with their mental health, and what would be some ways to support them in that?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question when it comes to signs that someone is struggling with their mental health. There is reduced activity or reduced reduced activity in things that they once enjoyed. So if you see somebody who you care about that's not going for activities that they used to enjoy, things of the sort, that is a sign that they're struggling from mental health. So they just seem with their mental health. So that means they seem very withdrawn. Their social activities, as I've said, they will most likely not be conversing with people as much as possible.
Mm.
There's also the element of, not being proactive in terms of taking care of their own well-being. So they
Yeah.
might not be waking up on time, they might not be able to leave their bed to go for a shower or brush their teeth. And these are signs of someone being in a depressive episode. So it's important to note when all of these things are happening. It is also important to note that sometimes when somebody is struggling with suicidal ideation, that they may um at one point, like if they just came out of being very sad and all of a sudden have this burst of energy, that it could be a sign that they are like in the final stages of making like a plan in terms of attempting suicide. So of course be on the watch out for that. um and I think given that the nationwide suicide hotlines, it's important to just reach out for help and talk to somebody.
Yeah. So being aware of,
Mhm.
yeah. Uh, you are one of the founders of MILE. Could you please tell us more about that?
Okay. So Smile is a nonprofit that aims to raise awareness on mental health and suicide. And the reason why I started Smile with my friends was that we saw how we discussed mental health in the country. Um, and I knew that needed to change. I knew we needed to be informed about mental illnesses. And it's the same way that you know the symptoms of a cold, the symptoms of a flu. It's the same way we also need to know symptoms of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder, knowing that people do suffer from this, and this does not make them um this does not make them like a bad person, because the way we've discussed these things, we vilify people with mental illnesses. So it was shifting that narrative and
Mhm.
talking about it from a perspective of whereby this can affect your loved ones. These are the causes of mental illnesses, and this is how we can create a supportive community for people with mental illnesses.
Yes. How can someone join FMAL and contribute towards mental health growth and awareness?
Okay, thank you so much for that um, question. So to join Smile, we have the Smile volunteer program. So of course, it is not possible to run the entire thing that we do by ourselves.
Yeah.
So people can volunteer to join us, and that is on our website, www.smile.org. So fmile.org. Um, there's also the ability for you to start a chapter in your own city, and that's kind of just spearheading like activities in your city that you wanna talk about when it comes to mental health. So that could be eating disorders, that could be um, imposter syndrome. Like you could be doing activities around all of these things that are around mental health or things that you're interested in. So there's that. And if you just generally want to contribute towards mental health activism, as I said, it's also the small things that matter. So it could be just how you discuss mental health with your friends or
Yeah.
family. So it's creating like a safe space whereby people feel comfortable enough reaching out to you um, to talk about mental health. And it's also creating a space whereby you feel comfortable reaching out to people when you're not doing well, when you're struggling with your own mental health.
Yes. What is our
Mhm.
next step to reversing stereotypes about mental health?
Okay. Um, In terms of reversing stereotypes around mental health, I think stereotypes arise when there's only like one story told. I think these are words I'm borrowing from The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. But in that TED talk, she does bring up the idea of when one story is told of like a single person, a group of people, and things of the sort. That is the only idea of them that we have. So when it comes to stereotypes, we need to show different variations of what, for example, living with ADHD looks like. Not everyone with ADHD looks the same. That's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It does not affect them all the same way. It's us talking about how, for example, autism spectrum disorders, it's like in this name is suggested it's a spectrum and it looks very, very different on everyone. It's like creating more and more narratives for people suffering from these conditions or living with these mental illnesses to be able to talk about their own narrative and not there being a single narrative around mental health conditions.
Yeah. And I want to add on a question. What can we do to fight the stereotypes in the government about mental health? Because I feel like that adds a lot into how we even can access mental health. It can
Mm-hmm.
take a lot away or stop people from getting help.
Mm-hmm. As in terms of like mental health activism, I think there is still a lot to be done, especially when it comes to government. So the I think the best route of action when it comes to changing governments and asking them to, be more inclusive of mental health and mental illnesses is again, with activism. It may seem small, it may seem impossible, but these small steps of radical and non-radical activism does lead to transformative things. So this looks like us not viewing mental health resources or us changing how we view mental health resources in school. So most of the times when we have mental health resources in school, it tends to be this whole idea of preventing liability on the school instead of actually taking proactive care of children within the school. So that's like the first problem we have when it comes to mental health within schools, right?
Yeah.
Mental health within when you're working, it's like actually ensuring that there is paid leave in case somebody is like struggling with their mental health, needs time off. This means also when it comes to the healthcare system, normalizing it that it's okay to be admitted into hospital for psychiatric help, things of the sort. And that means also, shifting how insurances talk about mental health. So
Yeah.
I know some insurances do not cover therapy, and that in itself is a problem. So once there are changes to the legislation when it says like, hey, insurances are mandated to cover therapy. It's such things that shift
Mm.
how the government looks at it as, and at the end of it all, we're the ones who are able to at least make the government see that these are issues as citizens and as people living here in general are like suffering from.
Yes. Are there any resources you'd like my followers to read, watch, listen to? I'll include Smile already in there.
Thank you so much. I would say for any resources when it comes to mental health, your first resource every time I would say is definitely a professional, so psychiatrist and all of that. And there are several pages that do raise awareness on mental illnesses. They're not coming to the top of my mind right now. But I would say like a great resource for learning about mental illnesses for me has been like WebMD. Um, it also has been Project Semicolon, just learning more from that, like having interactions with that. And there are definitely uh, YouTubers who do talk about their mental health struggle. So I believe there's somebody who has the channel How to ADHD, which has been vital in terms of understanding like what to do if you have ADHD. There is, I believe, this channel called Psych Central or not. I do not remember the name quite
Okay.
well, but they have this really cute animated videos that talk about different mental health issues. They like would talk about signs of like childhood trauma, attachment style, such things that do affect our day to day lives. and that are very important in terms of us understanding ourselves and understanding our interpersonal relationships with others. So yeah, those are some of the resources I would recommend.
Okay, those will all be linked below. And lastly, where can my followers find you on social media so they can keep up with you?
Okay, where you can find me on Instagram is Twitter and TikTok are at I am Abiero. I am fairly active on all social media platforms, especially Instagram. On Instagram, I do talk a lot about mental health. One, two, I also touch on living with epilepsy. And with living with epilepsy, it also comes with its own unique set of challenges, as epilepsy to a huge extent has also affected my mental health, and I do share my journey on that. And I do love, dabbling here and there on different social issues. So whatever interests me is pretty much what I'll talk about.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. Make sure you follow Michelle on all social media platforms and check out Smile. And make sure to follow our other social media platforms as well so you don't miss out on more interviews and important information. I hope you enjoyed the 18th episode of Society Inspired, and we will see you guys next time.